everyone, I am your host Joseph Bradley and welcome to Have an Adventure. In today's adventure we're going to go to an old abandoned ruins. Now it's a little known but very popular place in its time. Nestled in the scenic hills of Griffith Park, California, and partially still standing is the ruins of the old Griffith Park Zoo. What I wanted to do with this video is to show what's left of the old Griffith Park Zoo and compare it to what it looked like when it was open. Admittedly, there isn't much left, but it's still a great place to come, explore, have a picnic, and just to enjoy yourself. Now, starting with a wee bit of history, because I love history, this zoo opened in 1912, operated for 57 years, and closed in 1966. You know, a funny tidbit about the zoo is that when it opened, and they still called it a zoo, it only had 15 animals. It was really no more than a petting zoo, so it had an uphill struggle to become a real zoo. But it made it. And they did well for themselves. At its peak, it was taking in 2 million visitors a year. Now, I read that there were no entry fees, so I'm not sure that didn't have a lot to do with that. So, what was here then? I'll be honest, I couldn't find much. But with photos from the USC Library Archives and a few other places, I was able to piece together what a part of it, at least, looked like back in the early 1900s. Using Google Maps here and its measuring legend, the early days of the zoo looked to be around 4 acres, maybe 6. That's comparing the Google Maps picture of the zoo's loop with this old postcard from the original time period. And even if the expansion done in the 1930s made it twice as big, you can see how small this zoo was, especially compared to the Los Angeles Zoo and Gardens today, which is 133 acres. And yet, it had 2 million visitors a year. It must have been really crowded. What is here today is a row of enclosures and cages of different types and sizes that are set against and into a hill on one side of the zoo. And we're going to take a closer look at them then and now. But one of the things I wanted to know was what animals were in these cages. Fortunately, I was able to find some old photos that helped me find out what that was, or what they were. Starting with these big stone structures, they of course held the big animals. But I'm thinking not ones that could jump. Because if you look closely, you can see that the only thing between them and the visitors was a short chain link fence. And some of those visitors were inside that fence. Now, as far as I can tell, from the pictures anyway, only bears were kept there. Now, here you can see the polar bears were in one of them, and a black or brown bear was in another. Now, I can't tell a difference, so if anyone knows the difference between a black bear and a brown bear, please leave a comment below. And while you're taking some time to think about that bear, remember to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button so others can find and join us. Because the more people that join us, the more adventures we can have and the more adventurous we can be. Just past those big enclosures is a building with a parrot on it, a single door, and no windows. Now I figure it must have been some sort of aviary, but there's nothing else there, so I couldn't confirm it. Now right next to that is a row of small cages. Unfortunately, I couldn't find one picture of what used to be in them. So again, if you know, please leave a comment below. I have seen a lot of pictures with people in them, and that's not a bad idea for, say, a Halloween Nights festival. What do you think? As we walk a little bit and get to some larger cages, I was able to get pictures of some of the animals that call these home. And what a little home they were. They probably measured about 8 feet by 12 feet. As you can see, most of them have a shelf of some sort where the animal can jump up and have a little bit of darkness, if you will. I think maybe they mistook it for privacy. Some of them had a small pond, maybe 3 by 4 and 2 feet deep, and some of them have nothing more than a watering trough. Most of them didn't even have that, so I don't know where they got their water from. Now, as you can see in these old pictures, they had a tiger. He, of course, was way too big for such a small cage. They have this panther. Well, you can tell he wasn't very happy, was he? They have a leopard and some smaller wildcats. Now, anyone want to tell us what those cats were? I'd like to know. Now, here's a picture of a polar bear in one of those small cages. Now, this must have been a temporary home, since we saw from the earlier pictures polar bears were normally kept in the big enclosures. Now, here's a strange one. Some of these bigger cages have these pulleys. Now, I don't know, in fact, I don't have a clue as to what they were for. So again, if anyone knows, enlighten us in the comments below. On the hill behind these were what you might think of as the behind-the-scenes stuff. At the top of the enclosures were buildings that had a 3x3 or a 4x4 cage and a stairway that went down to the enclosure. As you would think, they must have brought up one animal at a time, put them there for inspections, cleaning, or vet work. Now today, along with most of the cages, they're very useful canvases for would-be graffiti artists. Now up the hill is another cage sitting all by itself. Now that in itself felt a little strange, but maybe they also kept animals there for when they were being cared for. If you come in from the front, it looks like just one cage, but there's actually 3 cages welded together. 2 small ones in the back and a larger one in front. As you can see, the mud from the rains from the hill are really starting to fill them in, but I was still able to get inside the big cage. Now, I really wanted to feel what the animals felt. So I took some footage in several different cages, including this one, to try and get a feel of it from the animal's perspective. I have to be honest with you, looking out from the cages like the animals did was not a pleasant feeling. I don't know why, but I swear I got that trapped feeling the animals might have had. I'm very glad that these small cages are not being used anymore. Now, going away from the cages and taking another look at that old postcard, you can see the area in the loop was just dirt, chain link fencing, and a few small sheds. And looking at some other pictures I found, this area looks to have held more animals. For instance, there's this family of wolves, the proverbial monkeys, a couple camels, at least 2 elephants, and some penguins. Oh, and let's not forget the animals that came to see the animals, because, you know, we're animals too. An interesting and sad story about those camels. It seems that they were in some sort of crash on the way to the zoo, and both camels broke their humps. And as you can see from those pictures, those humps don't look so good. Now, moving to a more friendly area where they probably have the souvenir shops and the rest areas after the expansion in the 1930s is what looks like a babbling brook. Now, the water from that had to come from a reservoir up the canyon somewhere. Now, I took these pictures of all of these stone structures. As you can see, they're staggered going up the canyon, and they had to have kept the water flowing at a fairly predetermined rate. You know, I noticed that some of the buildings that were here just a few years ago have been torn down because they had become just too dangerous. And really, who knows how long all of this will stay. So I encourage you to get out and go see it when you have time. It's one of the great places that Griffith Park has to offer, and just one of the places I want to take you in the coming months and years. So until next time, remember that life can and should be an adventure. So create that adventurous mindset and go out and have an adventure. Now, thank you so much for coming with me today. This adventure was really cool. It's nice to have so many wonderful things so close to home. You know, living in Los Angeles, I have lots and lots of really cool places that I can go and check out and have adventures at. And I really hope that you will join me for every one of them. Now, if you liked this adventure, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button, because I really want you with me on every adventure that we go on.